people used to say to me when I'll be in yoga schools around the world, they used to say to me, "Do you know a relationship can be a spiritual path?" But because all my reading had been from the kind of mystical paths where, you're in India and you leave your family, you go on your own, I didn't believe it. But it's only now when I think, oh my God, this is the most beautiful spiritual path I've ever experienced in my life. And it's through relationship.
I was sat by the beach the other day, and I was asking myself, and it's a beautiful question to ask, how can I be more present right now? What would that look like? To really understand what I needed to do to just be here now. But just to actually, what does that will look like for me to be more present here?
Yeah.
Probably losing all these narratives that I've got in my head about how I'm seen. On my own, I find that those voices, as we all probably can relate to, the voices get louder when you're on your own. It's a beautiful recipe for just for growth, like being in the van, spending time alone. It's like, how do you feel about yourself when you're by yourself? And that for me is really prevalent. When I was sat on the beach, I was like, okay, what do I need to do to be more present right now? Okay, tune into the body, tune into my breath. Probably drop my shoulders a little bit because my body's quite tense. And then I just found myself like actually being a bit more here.
Yeah.
And I was just open.
Yeah.
And I wasn't trying to impress or please anyone. And I actually realised in that moment that I was trying to just make connection with people. But in doing that, I was actually probably creating more separation. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's so tense, and I probably wanted that. And I was like looking for it,
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, it's easy for me and you to say, well, if we can be alone with ourselves, i.e. be alone with our thoughts and feelings and sensations, that's freedom. But yet there's this deep human drive to connect with each other and to be with each other and to really kind of see and hear each other. Fascinating, isn't it?
I actually had a question whilst doing a bit of research. I was like, how do I begin this conversation? And I wanted to ask you, like, what does self-love look like for you? Because I think love's a huge one. And if I want to be as direct as possible, it's like, do you love yourself? And what does that look like for you?
That's a great question. I would have probably answered it differently a few years ago. It's not having flower baths. It's not going for massages, even though I love massages. It's not self-care. No, it's not that. For me, and I'm going to use the word spirit because it works for me. It just works for me. Self-love. It's actually beyond self-love, but self-love is ever present when I'm connected to spirit. And it's interesting, we started the conversation talking about presence because for me it's exactly the same thing. It's always here, it underpins the essence of existence, yet we get lost and we forget about it because we get caught up in the external world and this kind of Newtonian model of cause and effect, and we have to come back, we have to, the world of self-development and mindfulness and so on is so prevalent now because we've gone too far into the kind of field of mind that we need the doorways, we need these doorways, we need yoga, we need breath work, we need mindfulness, we need meditation, we need connection, we need presence with each other through the senses. We need dance, we need catharsis, if that's our thing, to bring us back to that kind of stillness, void, expansiveness, to experience the familiarity of a really, really deep connection. And for me, my reference point for that connection with spirit, that means that self-love is just there without even thinking about it. It's a vibration. It's like a subtle vibration, and it wasn't always with me, Chris. I remember when I first contemplated presence, or first contemplated meditative inquiry, and I couldn't keep still. I really couldn't keep still. I first kind of did a yoga and an intensive meditation experience about 14 years ago in Thailand, even though I dabbled with it before that, and I just couldn't keep still. But I remember on my first ever 10-day silent retreat that I did in Thailand, which must have been about 10 years ago, and it was almost as if I had to train the beast to be still, to be still, to be still, to be still, and stop fighting, and recognize that every time I saw my thoughts and I came back, it was a victory, instead of thinking I'd failed by doing that. And it was only when I realized that, oh, actually, this is a victory. I keep seeing my thoughts. Instead of fighting with them, I'm actually coming back to a state of presence. And there was a moment where it was probably one of the most intense moments of my entire life, where I felt like someone had ripped open the chambers of my heart, and my heart was popping out, and I could have disappeared. I could have disappeared into nothingness. And I didn't. There was a little bit of fear came. But that was probably the first, apart from years before that with ecstasy, and that meditative inquiry experience of expansiveness into nothingness, into fullness, into love, into bliss, was the first of many peak experiences. And whilst peak experiences are only peak experiences, I do believe that every time we have that type of experience, whether it's intentional or whether it's through medicine, it changes things. It really, really changes things. And we're all having this human experience, and as a human we think and we feel and we act and we have a personality, but yeah, I still get lost sometimes in the mind, but I can just close my eyes now and remember.
Do you ever start to crave that? Because that also is a tendency of what happens. We have a peak experience, we have a beautiful moment, and then we want more of it.
I did, for sure. I was a junkie. I was all over the world. I was everywhere. I was trying everything. And I mean, look, mind speaking now, isn't it? Maybe I do still crave it, but for sure I craved it. And now it's like spiritual evolution, self-development, whatever we want to call it. I do believe that right now in my life, I could just rest and just be okay with myself. But my worldview now of my life is not, my worldview used to be growing, from the conditioning from my childhood, life's a battlefield. And then it was, as I evolved, it was, hang on a minute. No, it's not, Mum. It's not a fucking battlefield. What is it? Life's an adventure. And now it's like my worldview is like, wow, fucking hell. It's like this. I have a personality right now, which according to people like Joe Dispenza is a combination of what I think, what I feel, and how I act. But the potential to change that personality, not because I'm unhappy with myself, but because the potential within me is massive. And in order to kind of experience life in ever expanding ways and different ways and continue on that adventure, and also in order to leave my mark on the world with a legacy and go into death with that behind me, I'm just excited. So I want to change my personality, not because I'm unhappy, because I just see so much potential in the future. And it's a game, and it's a fun game. So I'm enjoying life. I'm actually enjoying meditating every single morning again with my partner, Sarah. We meditate together now. That's also a big shift for me, because my practice was solitary for many, many years, and now it's a we. It's predominantly a we. We get up, we have a routine in the morning, we prop ourselves up, we do breathing practices, we meditate, we talk about what our emotional focus is before the meditation and the visualization, and it's more of a we thing now. It's beautiful. So that's a shift for me. But I've gone off a tangent though, and you're listening quite patiently. But I guess the take-home message from there, which I believe, it's a belief of mine, that I do want to change. I want to change my personality, but not because I'm pissed off and traumatized, because I want to create magic in the world. You know?
It's going to change anyway.
For
but
sure.
do we do it intentionally or not?
Yeah.
We're always shifting and altering. And if we're not conscious of how we're responding to all these external things, situations, relationships, things going on in the world, the noise on the telly, everything like that, if we're not responding to it.
Tell it? What's one of those? We had this chat before.
The telly. Yeah, man. But it's true. It's like, how do you do that when you haven't much time on your hands? Because I think this is one big thing that always gets puts a counter. It's like, wow, I don't have the time. I don't have the time to sit in the morning. And for me, it comes down to priorities. I'd like to hear your take on people's, let's say, counter.
Yeah.
It's not an excuse, it's a counter argument.
I'm going to answer the question based on my experience in life over the last few years. So my experience in life over the last few years has very much been inspired by people like Dr. John DeMartini and Dr. Joe Dispenza, very much so. So my answer is kind of influenced by those type of leaders. And, I get that we all have responsibilities, for sure. And there's a perception that we don't have time. So my message to my clients who have got a big business and 3 kids and a divorce and bills to pay and all that kind of stuff is, let's try and carve out within your life pockets. And I say pockets because they're not like me and you. They're not going to go off on a 10-day retreat. They don't have time to do that.
Yeah,
when they live in the external world.
When I did my first 10-day, I was like, who has this amount of time? Because it's not just 10 days, it's before, after, it's logistics. It's like 2 weeks to do absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And you have no idea what you're going to get from it.
But if I can help a client to carve out little pockets of time, and the practice within those pockets is to teach them how to access the consciousness of no time. And when they can do that, a 5-minute experience of nothingness, of expansiveness, can regenerate the brain, regenerate our body, and it feels like they've been asleep for 10 days. So that has weaved its way into my practice now, where we carve out little moments of time, and I teach them specific to what they need, because some clients might need to shake for a little bit and let out a little bit of steam before they can access stillness. And some clients can go on a traditional kind of meditative inquiry. And it takes practice, and it takes courage, and it takes effort until it doesn't. But by weaving those little pockets in, clients can experience deep transformation
Mm.
without going on a 10-day retreat or doing something weird and wonderful like I've done on my journey. So that has become important for me.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's symptom relief for some people?
Um,
And not getting to root causes of what's...
well, I look at, I mean, I'm glad you've asked that question because I'm fascinated by the word transformation.
Mm.
And in terms of the root cause, I look at transformation within, if you like, 4 steps. They don't have to be linear steps, but for me, there's definitely 4 parts of the transformational journey. And the first one is past.
Mm-hmm.
Going into the past, what is the root cause? Self-understanding, joining the dots. Haha, that's why I'm like that. I'm behaving like my dad. Let's do something about it. Trauma. Maybe I need to keep going into the past. Maybe I need to work with the therapist, do some body work. So that is obviously a part of the transformational process.
Mm.
And dependent on one's perception of trauma or perception of one's life, a person may stay there longer. I also believe we can get lost there.
Mm-hmm.
1,000,000%. For example, with some of my clients, if they come to me and they've had years of therapy and it's obvious that most of it's been integrated, I actually have a rule that whenever we meet, we don't even talk about the past. So the first step is the past, and look, the world of therapy is amazing now. There's so much out there, beautiful therapists that help us to unlock. But for me, the next stage is cultivating present moment awareness, whether that's through movement or breath work or meditation or connection with nature or whatever it is. But it's that keep coming back, training the mind to really kind of rest in spirit, if you like. So that's part of it. The third part of it is what I call real life practice. For example, a guy is stressed at work without awareness. He takes his shit on with him. He walks through the door. His wife triggers the laugh out of him, and before you know it, they've detached, they've exited, and it keeps going on forever. So an example of a real life present practice or micro practice would be, and I talk about a lot of these with my clients, but an example would be a guy's had a shitty day. He drives home from work, and before he enters into his castle, he has a practice. He practices. He comes to stillness. He might have a breathing practice. He might play some music, whatever it is. He might have a little shaking practice. He might even scream on his way home driving the car. But before he goes in through that door, he has a felt sense of presence. He's ready for anything. He becomes the king who can hold anything. He opens the door. He's ready for whatever comes, and he walks through that door. And things like that are an absolute game changer. Other little examples of a micro practice would be when you're talking to your kids, actually look into their eyes. When you tell your mother you love her, actually stand in front of her, breathe with her for a second, go as close as you can, look into her eyes and say, Mum, do you know how much I love you? Instead of a text message or instead of a little, see you, Mum, I love you. So these kind of practices of presence are real life practices, and we'll make mistakes and we get it wrong, but after a while we get it right. And the last part is what I've now called future hacking, and that's similar to the Joe Dispenza work, where we're actually slowing down the brainwaves, coming into the doorway of the subconscious mind, and when we get there, evoking what we want to feel in life from the inside out, evoking how we want to think in life from the inside out, instead of waiting for our external world to make us happy or sad. So those kind of 4 parts of transformation are really, if you like, part of my work with clients. The past, understanding the past, present moment awareness, coming back to self, little real life micro practices, and the future hacking. So I kind of like that model. I just kind of,
yeah, it's nice, man.
put it together.
Yeah, I love it. I feel that's how to show up better. That's how we can show up better in our day to day, in our workspaces,
Mhm.
relationships, in all aspects of our life, like developing these healthy practices to bring us into a state of, presence being, so we can be better, so we can show better. And that is so crucial. They're the foundations, right,
Mhm.
of strength, of gratitude,
Mhm.
of love, a big one.
Yeah.
And I want to come back to the staring at your mother's eyes, because
Mm. Mm.
that was an interesting. There was an energy shift within me. So I was like, why is that so hard to do? Let's come back to that. But I think this is showing up better in our daily lives. But it's not until we don't get our needs met or our boundaries are crossed
Uh-huh.
that we go so far away from
Yeah. Of
presence,
course.
and we shoot off into these like past and future like selves that we just
Yeah.
we ju- we just we just go out of the body into the story.
Yeah. Into the familiar past.
So what then?
Um.
And how what common threads do you see
Well, that
with the
well,
people?
that's exactly why I'm glad we're getting to this, because it's critical for men now, and I know we're not only talking about men, but um, I will come back to your question,
Yeah.
but I mean everything's perfect, and you know what I mean. I don't have any regrets, but if you ask me what mistakes I've made,
Mm-hmm.
I could say I haven't made any, but I could also say I have in service to others, to help others watching this podcast, and around this concept of being present, which is huge in today's world of social media and technology. We know what we're being taken away from the very essence of who we are in the present moment. For years and years and years, I was traveling the world. I was doing retreats. I was exploring psychedelics. I was spending time on my own in darkness and mountains, and I had a relationship. So I had this kind of meditative inquiry box of tools, and I had a relationship. But I still fucked up in relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was terrible in relationship. I was just copying the way my mum and dad related, shouting at each other, exiting at every opportunity, not watering the garden, and conveniently having a job travelling around the world and being busy. It's only, I mean, I'm 51 now. It's only in, as I sit here with you now, it's only in the last year when I've actually followed my own advice, spent less time in a conscious practice, and spent more time really cultivating my state of being in that relationship, and being aware when I exit and not exit, and being aware when I was on my phone and having rules around my phone, and listening and not interrupting. And every time she judged me because she loved me and she wanted the best for me, don't flip it back like it's a fucking football match. And validate her feelings even though they're not your feelings. And so on. There was so many mistakes I was making in relationship. I was interrupting all my girlfriends. I was trying to dominate. I was being a little bit aggressive. I was being the fixer. I was devaluing their experience. I wasn't listening properly. I wasn't looking at them when they were talking to me. I used to exit, and it's only when I ate humble pie and said, do you know what? You need to listen to this woman. She's giving you an instruction manual on how to be present, and you're just fucking it off and going meditating and thinking that you can cultivate presence in meditation and bring it into your relationship. You can't. And all I can say to you is, I gave up a contract that I had working for World Rugby. I was supposed to be away this year 133 days from my partner. I gave it up completely. And I leaned, and I've been leaning into the relationship now for a while, and it's just brought me to my knees how beautiful my relationship now is, and how it's. People used to say to me when I'll be in yoga schools around the world, they used to say to me, do you know a relationship can be a spiritual path? But because all my reading had been from the kind of mystical paths where, you're in India and you leave your family, you go on your own, I didn't believe it. But it's only now when I think, oh my God, this is the most beautiful spiritual path I've ever experienced in my life. And it's through relationship. And it comes back to what I said before about my own practice now. And it's a we. It's a we. It's not a me. And I just can't believe it. How I changed in relationship. Because before that, I made the same mistakes over and over and over and over and over again. And now there's a felt sense in my body that, this is just magical, but it wasn't. We used to fight like cat and dogs. Fuck you, exit strategy.
So this was the same
Yeah,
partner?
Yeah.
Wow.
And all I can share with other men is this, whether I'm right or wrong, it's my belief that irrespective of whether she changed or not, or whether she did her work, it don't fucking matter, because I did mine. I did mine without expecting her to change. Some of my clients come to see me and say, my missus has done that, she's fucking makes my life a misery. No, she doesn't make your life a misery. And other clients would come and say, well, if I'm doing my work, she needs to fucking do her work. It's like, grow up. Just do your fucking work. And all I can say is when we eat humble pie and we step in because something in our heart is saying you need to be with this woman or this man if you're in a gay marriage, for me, magic has really happened. But it's the first time I've really lent in, to be honest, and prioritised it.
Well, what's happening there on a subconscious level is you're communicating to that person that they're not enough and that they're not okay as they are, and that doesn't give them any room to be present with you, to feel accepted, to feel like just in it with you.
100%.
It's so alarming when you draw people's attention to that. And like Jay Shetty's is doing the rounds now, and he talks about this in relationships. It's like, oh, go read this book. Like you're speaking to your partner.
Yeah.
Oh, what about? It's basically when you say you give your partner, I want you to do this work with me. It's like giving them a book on like how to be better in bed. Imagine giving that to your partner.
You can't fucking do that. That's a classic in men that come to me.
Yeah.
Well, I bought my missus. So I tell my men to read books like, I don't know if you've read Get the Love You Want or The Love Languages.
Yeah.
I'll say read these books. I don't say to them buy one for the missus, but they come back to me and they say, when you told me to order that book, I also bought one for my missus. It's like, oh my God, you fucking idiots. You idiots. You don't give your missus one. You be the change. You become the book.
Yeah.
Because with trust, actions are everything, aren't they?
Yeah. Was it you with what's his name? Chris Brown talking about be the prayer.
Be the prayer, yeah.
Don't be the preacher.
Yeah. Don't be the preacher, be the prayer.
Yeah.
I
think it's because our communication, our language, and in the way in which is that's sometimes communicated through our tone, through like how we are when we communicate that sentence of words. What's greater than that is the energy in which we embody, and we can talk about that, but it's like how we are moving through life.
Yeah.
Because we will all, and I do this, have a podcast, I'm going to definitely say some things that I'm not doing.
Yeah.
Because I've convinced myself that because I want to be that person.
Yeah, of course.
But it's like, I'm not quite there yet, but I'm repeating things which I feel like I'm doing, but am I? And there's different levels to it, and it's a contrast.
Yeah.
And that's why spending time alone is really important.
Yeah.
Because you're your best self when you know you're being watched.
Of course.
Yeah.
Have you tried darkness?
No.
Yeah.
It's been calling.
I recommend it.
I don't rush to things, but it scares the life. There's a few more scary things I've got coming up this year, I think.
Nice.
So what was that experience like for you? Let's talk about that. This was a while ago.
It was a while ago, yeah. I first experienced darkness for 2 days on a 500-hour yoga meditation teacher training, and then I just decided to go in for 10 days. I'm not as extreme as I used to be, but yeah, it was.
How did that shift you or change?
It's a good question, that. I mean, if you ask me how have I changed over the years for better, my answer is always, look, shit still happens, but it doesn't stick to me anymore. So I think, and also this is, what's coming through me now is based on your question is how my quantification of success has changed. Success used to be an external pursuit, and if you ask me now how do I know if I'm successful or not, my answer is always, I'm just, and this is not a metaphor, I feel it, it's like I'm just more comfortable in my own skin, and that's success for me. I'm not necessarily making more money. It's probably the same as when I used to work full time in professional rugby, but I'm just more comfortable in myself. And of course, there's a limit to that as well. You put me on a stage in front of 500 people, I might be shitting myself. But generally speaking, I'm more comfortable in myself. And the darkness was tough. Obviously, I didn't know what time it was. You lose the concept of time. It's complete darkness. But in my judgment, the mornings were incredibly blissful. You're in blackness. Your parasympathetic nervous system is so kind of on. And everything's calm, and there's just nothingness. It's like, fucking hell. But then the mind kicks in. The mind kicks in throughout the day, and I find myself catastrophizing. There'd be times when I have my hand, because I could have opened the door. I didn't, but I could have. There's times when I have my hand on the door thinking, fuck this. But, yeah, I mean,
What kept you in?
What kept me in was just knowing that every time I move through challenge, there's a growth on the other side, really. And also, I also had a belief that I needed to challenge myself.
Is that still there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like what Dr. John DiMartini says. Choose your challenges. Choose them, because if you don't, life will give you them. So I like that. I tend to choose my challenges.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with Pat about, I was going off on a tangent about how we can, with the technology we have, like we can create like systems and structures that create difficulty for our benefit, because we really don't have, and you can talk about this in terms of younger generations, and so much opportunity.
Yeah.
But there's like there's not much resistance there in terms of external resistance to have that precursor for change, or have something in place that's like, we talk about rites of passages, or going through a really challenging, difficult period of time. My year, if I've not got something coming up this year that's really gonna push me out of my comfort zone, and like you start catastrophizing, but it's really you're just contemplating death.
Yeah, of course.
Going on a long walk for a couple of days, that does that to me.
Yeah.
Start to catastrophize. You start to have to check in with yourself and speak to yourself in ways that gets you through it.
Yeah.
And maybe call on people.
Yeah.
Because you need it, and you need those elders, those people around you that are gonna tell you the truth and support you through that process.
Yeah.
Like, this is so inherent and important to our growth.
Of course.
It's unarguable. It used to happen naturally,
Yeah.
and now it's somewhat
Yeah.
got to be manufactured.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And especially in the realm of young men growing up, we're looking for challenge. Testosterone kicks in. You're looking for challenge.
It's normally in the dating field.
I also think it's important to witness, not to witness. I also think it's important though to acknowledge, two doorways of challenge as well. Me and you would naturally want to talk about the traditional kind of goal-driven, process-driven challenges of the masculine world, if we're talking polarity here. But there's also the other challenges for young men to learn how to kind of to receive and to be nurtured and to allow maybe someone else to take the lead. You know, challenge doesn't always involve this kind of masculine pursuit of pain and goal-driven perfection and the trophy over the head. You know, challenge can come in many different ways. So I think it's important to acknowledge that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The internal world, the internal landscape,
Yeah,
our psychology
yeah,
that is vast and largely unknown. It's like that's what we need to conquer now.
for sure,
I feel.
for sure. But also the challenge of, the challenge of communicating with each other,
Mm-hmm.
the challenge of being seen, the challenge of speaking up, the challenge of setting your boundaries. You know, all this domain for young men, which, you know, most of us associate challenge with sport or some kind of sexual pursuit.
Yeah, competitive
Competition,
nature.
yeah.
For sure. So, what have you seen over the last decade of diving into men's work? What have you seen shift and change over that period of time?
So when I'm asked a question like that, the reality of my world is, because I don't have a TV, because I don't read the newspapers,
Mm-hmm.
might look like I'm on social media, but I'm not on social media, really,
Yeah,
in terms of my time. I only know what's happening in my sphere.
sure. The people that are showing up.
So I would be lying if I said to you, well, you know, it seems on a global level that this is happening and this is happening, because I'd be bullshitting you. I don't know. All I can say to you, Chris, is that in the clients that I work with, there's definitely a shift from me to a pursuit of we in the relationship sphere, 100%. And I just see incredible men. You know, I get there's still violence in the world, of course. And as a man, if there's still violence in the world, I have a responsibility to change for the benefit of the greater good. But I just see magic, especially on our retreat programs. It's just fucking magical. I just brings me to my knees every time I do it, and I feel like I've not even been there. Something's channel through me, and I love my clients. I'm in love with them. It's not client. It's not coach client. It's just I just love them, and I think that's contrary to what you might learn on a life coaching course. I think it's really important. You know, we need to be loved. So coming back to your question,
I think that's a brilliant, humble response.
and on the other side, you know, I'm seeing family members fucking struggling, you know, really struggling, and the shame lives deep inside the bones and the tissues, and the denial of suffering, and craving to be seen, but yet feeling so pathetic that they don't allow themselves to be seen. Yeah, so that's tragic. That's tragic.
Do you create space for grief in your life?
I have created space from. I'm glad. That's a good question. I have a story around grief as well. I used to, when I got into men's work, I found that I could look at you and, you know, we'd look into each other's eyes and grief would come. You know, the grief of not having a brother, the grief of losing a brother when I was 8 and he went into the army. He was 12 years older than me. The grief of believing that my brother was never there for me. The grief around the belief that my dad wasn't there for me emotionally, although he kind of was. I just believed what I downloaded from my mother about my father, and that's another story. But grief per se, I found when I got into men's work that it was easy for me to cry in front of you. Cry in front of a woman, not a fucking chance. So that's been my journey. And sometimes I've needed hallucinogenics to do that. But my body's remembered that somehow, and I'm just so much kinder now when I'm with my women. Because I do have a story around not respecting women. That's a big part of my stuff. And it goes back to my mother when I was a kid, and in her own way, teaching me that I shouldn't settle down, teaching me that I should just love them and leave them, showing a bit of an animosity whenever I brought a girl home. You know, it's like, well, I can be loving with mum, but I can't be loving with another woman. And there's a whole deep story there, but I unconsciously fucking hated women growing up. Not consciously, because I could be the Mr. Nice Guy, but unconsciously, I just wanted to project anger on them. Which is really me just wanting to project anger on the part of my mum who kind of conditioned me in that way. Because most of my mum, I just love her to pieces. Coming back to the grief question, it was hard for me to show tears and softness and kindness and grieve in front of a female. But now I've had to work hard on that, and I've had to work hard on verbalizing my anger, and I've had to work hard on communicating my anger. Only this morning, in the kitchen with my partner Sarah, you know, I said to her, "I'm fucking angry right now. I'm just fucking angry. I'm a bit irritable." And she just looked me in the eye and said, "Thanks for telling me that." Whereas before, I wouldn't have voiced that before, and carried it. And then, of course, she prods a wound, it comes out, it's World War Three. So the verbalization of my anger and loving my anger and releasing anger has been really important for me. And it's allowed me to be more sensitive around women and not be embarrassed or shamed if I shed a tear. So grieving is incredibly important, and I've learned through the archetypal work. Actually, I've learned through the archetypal work that, and I'm going to relate it to my mother. My mother's 85, and in my judgment, I don't know how long she's got left. She's frail. She keeps going downhill, and but because of the archetypal work, especially around lover and the relationship to sadness, and how sadness is a way to release but enter into the river of love and enter into a world of new beginnings, I have a belief that I'll probably cry my fucking eyes out on my knees when she dies, but it'll be so beautiful that if I allow it to happen, I'll be a much more loving man in the world. So yeah, grieving is incredibly important.
Thanks for sharing that, man.
Yeah, no worries.
It's powerful, so powerful. What would come up for you when you were in the presence of a woman and sadness would come, or emotion would come?
Yeah, it was just weakness.
Weakness.
Yeah, it was just it was just my mother. As a kid, I mean, I've seen my mother how she is around other people's little kids, you know, and you know, she doesn't know what she's doing. She thinks she's trying to actually protect them and be there and help them to be strong. But she'll say things like, "You don't have to cry. You know what you're crying for? Don't be a crybaby."
How do we shift
You
that?
know?
How do we shift that? Because that's a big part of. It's what I've seen as most effective and makes so much sense when you stop trying to fix people. And we all do it, and we do it from a loving, virtuous place. And I was going to ask, what would you do in a situation where you express that anger to your partner, but what would you do if she said, "Oh, don't feel that. You don't need to be angry." Like, what would you do in that situation?
Well, what I've done is the right question, really, because I have done that, and she's done that as well. I mean, going back even 2 years ago, I had this real belief. Now, I'm not justifying projection of anger actually here at all, because I used to do that. I'm not justifying that, but on the flip side, on the backside of that, I also had a belief that, do you know what? There's no place for me to be angry in this relationship. Like, what's the fucking problem? You know, if I'm angry, I'm angry. And I want to be able to be, I actually want to be able to be angry and grumpy and irritated and frustrated, you know, without you having a shitty day because of it. And it's only conversations like that that need to happen. And now there's just a dialogue between us where we can voice perceived negative emotion to each other. And it's okay. It's okay. I mean, and sometimes there's a mismatch. Only this week, there's a couple of times where she's woke up like a tiger, you know, full of dynamic energy. And I've been like, vroom, just in that real kind of withdrawal state.
Stop slowly backing
You know?
away from the room.
And instead of the typical, what's up with you miserable bastard,
yeah,
which is most couples, unfortunately, she acknowledges it. And it's just acknowledged. And then if there needs to be a separation, like there was this morning, she went to the gym, and I normally go to the gym with her, but I didn't. I said, you know what, I need to just lie in the bed here. And just like, and she jokingly said, fucking hell, you look like you're in your coffin. But I was just honouring my needs.
Yeah.
And she was honouring her needs instead of, you should be like me and I should be like you, and the usual crap that goes on. Yeah.
Oh, magical dance, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, man.
It is. The other thing with the relationship as well, and I keep talking about it because I'm excited about my relationship now. Been together for about 7 or 8 years, but time is irrelevant now. I've always been a man that relates his purpose with his vocation. Of course, we've downloaded that from history, and as in a money earning vocation. I have been that type of man. And it has been at the expense of the relationship, but now, and this is my story, nobody else's, but I'm just feeling, I've witnessed it before, but now I feel it most of the time permanently, because we're very good now at repairing little microfractures in the relationship, and most of the time it feels brilliant. It's just like rocket fuel for my coaching practice and my business. Because when I feel her love, and when I feel her touch, and which is one of my love languages, and the other love language of mine is words of affirmation. I like it when she gives me positive feedback. It's like fucking rocket fuel. It's absolute rocket fuel, and I feel like the most inspired man in the world. So it's not a business and a relationship now. It's just everything has just kind of merged really into oneness for me. And I can't imagine not being in a relationship, and I can't imagine not running a business. But now, for the first time ever in the last year, the relationship is actually the foundation for me to be out there, hunting, if you like, in the world through my coaching practice. Whereas before I had this coaching practice, which was everything, and this relationship was over here, but now it's very much kind of here.
Is there many things that you are still working through
in the relationship?
Yeah, that you could talk about.
The stuff comes up every day, doesn't it? It's just a constant work on.
And do you have a space for that? Do you have a check-in? How does that look like in a tangible sense? Do you have other people that hold the space for you? Has that helped before in the past?
It has helped before, but what's happened with us two, and it relates to the 4 pillars of transformation that I was talking about, is what's happened is, and bless my partner, she had a difficult childhood, adoption and all that business, loss, suicide in the family, and it's almost as if, and my stuff was more about, my kind of trauma was a lot to do with bullying and stuff like that. It's like there's a judgment here in me that we've done our work there, and we've both also been on the kind of yogic meditation path, and we've we can cultivate quite easily, some presence, and we meditate every morning together without fail. It's kind of these last two pillars that are important for us, because we still need to not take each other for granted and still do these little micro practices and check-ins. And one of the things we always say is, are we clear? And she'll say, well, let me feel my body. No, I'm not clear. And then we repair it. We have another kind of check-in, which I learned from the love languages. It's, how's your love tank on a scale of 1 to 10? So if she asks me, I might say it's a 9 or it's a 6. Oh, what would make it an 8? And then I ask for my needs to be met, for example. So we do little things like that. But the other part for us now is that we're both heavily into Joe Dispenza and his work. So that's become a way, and it's beautiful. So that's part of our kind of unfolding together in future destiny and so on. And there's just so much joined upness in terms of how we want to live our life and what we want to do with it. So that's exciting. But yeah, there's still challenges. There's been a big challenge for us as well around. It's hard to get the right balance as well around triangulation. What I mean by that is getting caught up in other people's stories and triangulating ourselves in the story of, let's say, for example, a mum and dad or a sister and a brother, or getting caught so much in that story that we've brought it back into our relationship and it's been at the detriment. So a challenge for us is finding the balance between kind of being there for friends and family to a degree, but also prioritizing our relationship. And I've never done that before until the last year. And it's important for me because my relationship is the most precious thing in the world. Doesn't mean I don't love my mother. I love my mother more than any, the same as any other man. And my family members. But the most precious thing in my world is my relationship, which I'll prioritise.
Yeah, it does come back down to those. What am I prioritising today or this week? Yeah. What does that look like? Or this year even? Maybe someone's ill in the family. I have to prioritise that over anything for this year. Who knows? Yeah. But it's just really important to be conscious of that and just check in with that and communicate it. I imagine the communication side of things is crucial.
Yeah, of course.
And is that one of the biggest transferable things that comes from the immersive events that you do? Like how we communicate.
It for sure. But you I think you said something earlier about, I think we were on something else and you said something about, I can't remember what you said, but it was but my perception of it was that sometimes when we communicate, we forget about the tone. You mentioned something about tone.
Yeah.
And look, there's a whole lot of skill around communication, isn't there? There's workshops, there's PhDs on it, how to verbalise. But the energetics behind the verbalisation is really where it's at. Because I can stand in front of you and say to you,
I've been cut out a few times.
You're an awesome bloke, you know what I mean? I love you. But if I'm angry as fuck, you'll feel it.
Yeah, or if you're looking away.
Yeah, your nervous system will feel it. And in intimate relationships, with men, the repressed rage is what kills the relationship, not his words half of the time.
Yeah, sure.
And women are more empathic than us, They're designed that way. The biology is more, they can feel. So they can feel the anger. They can feel whatever emotion is behind our words. So it's important that we're congruent. A woman will respect you more if you're angry and you say, I'm fucking angry right now, because it's congruent. She won't respect you if she says you're angry and you say, I'm not fucking angry. I'm not angry. So it's that congruence between the energetics of our tone and our body and what we're feeling and the words that is really, really important. But it's tough. It's tough for men and women. But I can only speak from a man's perspective. It's really tough. The anger piece is tough.
The resentment comes through in this taps into the nice guy that really wants to make everyone happy and just
Yeah.
please everyone else. But we lie to ourselves often, and we suppress our truth, and that will come through and true in our energy. And it's so felt. And who are we to deny someone else's experience of how we're coming across?
Yeah.
It's true for them, as long as they're speaking from their experience.
Of course.
It's true for them.
Of course.
Doesn't make it right or wrong. Like, try and move away from the right and wrong.
I think therapy has a massive place in relationships. I really do. The right type of therapy, of course, because if we're just entrenched in entanglement and wounds and
Patterns,
violence to each other, and kids are involved and we've no time to be present, therapy is needed. And I'd love it to become common and available, more available.
Yeah, man. Coming towards the close of the podcast, let's talk a bit about the future of your work and what you're up to with what's the future of Men With That Mask.
Yeah, well, I've got 2 brands at the moment. I've got Craig White Mentoring, which was, if you like, the high performance part of me, the rugby, the team building, the corporate stuff. And there's Men Without Mask, which is my group stuff, life-changing retreats, one-day events and so on. But because I want to have more impact in the world, I'm slowly but surely moving everything over to Craig White, because I believe that my reputation in professional rugby, instead of me denying that, which I have done, to be honest, I'm going to use that profile to raise awareness and to have more impact. So, but for now...
Did you want to touch upon that?
Yeah, because I just want to have more impact. So within, if you like, the brand Craig White, we'll have a Facebook community, which we already have now. It's the Men Without Mask community. There'll be an online program section. I'm just creating a little mini program called The Challenges of Being a Man. I'm also going to go into a recording studio soon to create a lot of meditative series based on masculinity. We're going to be doing one-day events in the city of Liverpool. We do 5-day retreats already in a place called Skipton in Broughton Hall. Soon, I'm smiling because it's the dream of my life. Soon I'm taking 20 men to Peru on a retreat. It's called a King Retreat. I might change it to Legacy. But it's men that have done my 5-day program. And it's the next level. So it's all about leadership and legacy and mission and inspiration. And it's 5 days in the Sacred Valley of the Incas in Peru. And then we do the Machu Picchu Inca Trail. And then we finish in Cusco. So that's happening. And then probably a year from now, I'm going to create a 12-month men's coach certification program. And I also still offer private coaching because I like it. I love it. Occasionally I'll do remote coaching packages of guys in a different country, but I like to get guys here. You know, you've been here for a short period. You're staying overnight. It's a place called Hebden Bridge. So I have guys coming to me for deep immersions where they hand in the phone and we just go really deep for 3 or 4 days, and then there's an integration package at the end of it. So yeah, I'm really busy and I'm super excited, and I'm gonna try my best to write a book this year. I just don't know if I'll fit it in. And a podcast is on the horizon, which will be called Behind the Mask.
Yeah, I love that. Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's exciting, man. I can feel the enthusiasm oozing from you.
It is.
What was it, DiMartini? He talked about something I picked up. Gratitude, then love, then inspiration, then enthusiasm. And those are the 4 ingredients for business success.
Yeah, for sure. And, ironically, they're also felt emotions. But most of us are so stuck in survival that we never feel them. Because we just feel the same emotions every day: anger, sadness, fear, guilt, hurt, shame, regret. You know, and we really have to make the shift and do our work to move into that felt sense of these other emotions, which are just as real as the emotions of survival.
Yeah, it causes stagnation. And you're just going to attract that. Like that's just how it works. And
that's a message for men, actually, and women. Like, if you're feeling every single day anger, sadness, fear, guilt, hurt, shame, you know, and this is not me with a hammer, you know, it's an indication that something has to change. You know, it's important to recognize that that's not a normal. It's become a normal way of living, but you know, you don't have to feel that way. There's work that we can be done.
Yeah, same in relationships.
Yeah,
It doesn't need to be the way you perceive it as.
of course.
And that's the light really that has always seen me in many dark places, that I've always known that it doesn't have to be.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be. I can create really
Yeah,
a life. I can wake
yeah,
up in the morning and feel my
yeah.
feet on the ground and gratitude in my heart and just go about my
Mm.
day every day, and that's my success.
Yeah,
Waking up in the morning with a heart beating, and it's like
yeah,
my soul's alive, you know,
of course.
connected.
And it's so difficult for people to believe that they can choose the way they think and they feel. Obviously, difficult because most of our programs are automatic, but you know, we do have a choice. We do have a choice to cultivate the way we think and the way we feel, but it takes practice.
Nice, man. Beautiful to end it on.